The day had started quietly. Captain Jaren had been patrolling the asteroid belt for hours, checking shipping lanes and scanning for survivors. The hum of his ship was almost soothing, a reminder that he was alive, in control, but calm rarely lasted long in the void of space. Without warning, the ship shook violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashed, and smoke curled from the walls. A sharp metallic screech echoed as the hull strained under a collision. Jaren grabbed the console, trying to steady the trembling ship. He could hear the panicked voices of his crew over the comms. "Hull breach. We're losing pressure," someone shouted. Jaren's heart pounded, but he forced himself to focus. He had trained for emergencies like this, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. A loud crash echoed from the lower deck, followed by a series of thuds. He ran, his boots sliding slightly on the metal floor, smoke stinging his eyes. When he reached the source, he saw her. She was small, barely more than a teenager by human standards, with fur that shimmered reddish gold even under the harsh emergency lights. Her ears were pressed flat and her tail twitched in fear. A heavy beam had pinned her to the floor. Dust and sparks fell around her and blood ran along a gash on her arm. For a moment, Jaren froze. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Vulpine features, sharp eyes, delicate yet alert. There was a fragility to her, but also a quiet strength that refused to give in. Then instinct took over. He dropped to his knees beside her and lifted the beam with a grunt. The metal scraped against his shoulders, but he didn't stop. The smell of smoke and burnt wiring filled the air, but all he could think of was keeping her alive. "Hold on," he shouted, sweat stinging his eyes. "I've got you." Her amber eyes met his, wide and fearful, and for a heartbeat everything else disappeared, the alarms, the fire, the danger. She was alive, and he had to make sure she stayed that way. With a final heave, the beam moved enough for him to slide her free. She collapsed into his arms, trembling, her small body shaking violently. He felt her rapid heartbeat against his chest, matching the frantic rhythm of his own. Don't let me die," she whispered, her voice fragile, almost breaking. "You won't," Jaren said firmly. He held her tighter, feeling her fur against his uniform. "I promise. You're safe now." The ship groaned, and a spark shower fell from the ceiling. Jaren's eyes darted around. They had only moments. Using every ounce of his strength, he lifted her and carried her toward the escape pods. She clung to him, her tiny claws brushing against his shoulders, her ears twitching nervously. Who are you?" she asked, her voice small, barely audible over the alarms. "I'm Jaren," he said, tightening his grip, "and I'm not leaving without you." The path to the pod was chaotic. Fires blocked corridors, smoke made breathing difficult, and the hull shook as if the ship itself were alive and angry. But Jaren didn't falter. Every step was careful, deliberate. He could feel her trembling lessen slightly as he reassured her, murmuring her name after he learned it. Lyria. Finally, they reached the pod. Jaren secured her inside, checked the systems, and hit the launch sequence. The pod shuddered violently as it detached from the ship, spinning free in the void of space. Outside, he could see the main vessel erupt in flames, twisted metal scattering like fallen stars. Lyria clung to him, her small frame shaking, but her eyes no longer filled with terror. They were filled with awe, confusion, and something else he couldn't name yet. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "No," he replied softly, brushing a strand of fur from her face. "We'll get through this together." As the escape pod drifted into the silent darkness, Jaren held her close, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He couldn't let her go. Not now, not ever. The pod drifted silently through the darkness of space, the stars scattered like tiny diamonds against black velvet. Inside, the small cabin was quiet except for the gentle hum of life support and Lyria's shallow, trembling breaths. Jaren watched her carefully, feeling a strange mix of relief and concern. She was alive, safe for now, but she had been through more than anyone could bear. After what felt like hours, her eyes fluttered open. Amber-colored, alert, and wide with fear. She looked around, taking in the tight space, the blinking consoles, and finally Jaren. Her ears twitched nervously, flicking in every direction as if expecting danger at any moment. "Hey, you're awake," Jaren said softly, kneeling beside her. His voice was calm, steady, everything she might need in this moment of confusion. "Can you talk?" Lyria's lips trembled. She hesitated, her tail curling protectively around her body. I don't know, she whispered. I've never trusted anyone before? Jaren nodded slowly, understanding. That's okay. You don't have to trust me yet. But I'll be here. I won't let anything happen to you. Her eyes softened slightly, though the tension in her small body remained. She lifted a trembling paw and brushed it against his hand. It was almost a test, careful, cautious. Jaren held her paw gently. It's okay, he said. You're safe here. They sat like that for a long moment. The pod drifted past silent stars, carrying them farther from danger. Lyria's breathing slowly steadied. She finally curled into a small ball beside him, her fur brushing his uniform. Jaren wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, careful not to make her feel trapped, and waited patiently. Where are we going? She asked finally, her voice barely audible. Somewhere safe, Jaren said. Somewhere you can heal. Somewhere no one can hurt you. Her ears twitched and she leaned closer, almost instinctively seeking comfort. I don't know if I can survive alone, she admitted. You won't have to, he said firmly. You're not alone anymore. I'll stay with you, always. A tiny shiver ran through her, and for the first time a hint of a smile touched her lips. It was fragile, uncertain, but it was real. Jaren could feel it like a spark of warmth in the cold metal cabin. Days passed as the pod drifted toward the nearest station. Jaren kept her close, talking quietly, sharing stories about humans, about space, about simple things that would make her feel normal again. Slowly, she began to respond, asking questions, making small jokes, twitching her ears in curiosity instead of fear. One evening, as they watched a nearby star casting golden light into the cabin, Lyria hesitated, then spoke. Jaren, why did you save me? Why risk yourself? He paused, looking at her small, vulnerable form. Because I couldn't leave you there. No one deserves to die like that. You deserved a chance. And I don't know. I just couldn't turn away. Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears. You didn't have to care about me, she whispered, voice breaking slightly. I did, he said simply, meeting her gaze. I do. Her tail twitched, brushing against his arm in a gesture that was both cautious and intimate. That night she curled closer to him, a quiet trust beginning to grow between them. Jaren felt a warmth he hadn't expected, not from the pod's heaters, but from her presence. For the first time since the crash, both of them allowed themselves a moment of peace. The world outside was dangerous, chaotic, and uncertain, but here in the quiet hum of the pod they were safe. They were together, and in that fragile bond a seed of something stronger, something human, something beautiful, had been planted. And though neither of them knew what lay ahead, one thing was certain: they would face it together. The escape pod docked at a small outpost on the edge of the system. The station was old, battered by years of asteroid collisions and solar storms, but it was safe. For the first time since the crash, Jaren and Lyria stepped out onto solid metal, the faint hum of machinery filling the quiet corridors. Lyria stayed close to him, her small frame almost hidden by his shadow. She still flinched at sudden noises, and every unexpected movement made her tail twitch nervously. Jaren noticed, but he didn't rush her. Patience had saved lives before. He knew it would save hers too. They spent the next few days exploring the station, gathering supplies and keeping to themselves. Lyria was cautious but curious. She tilted her head at the blinking lights and the odd smells of the station, and for the first time she asked questions, not about survival, but about life. What is this place? She asked softly as they walked through the empty corridors. It's a station, Jaren replied. A place where people live, work, and sometimes hide. It's not much, but it's safe. Her amber eyes followed him, filled with wonder and a hint of awe. It's different, peaceful. Jaren smiled. Different can be good. As days turned into nights, their bond grew in ways neither had expected. Lyria began to trust him, leaning on his arm, following him instinctively through the station. She laughed quietly at his jokes, a soft, melodic sound that made Jaren's chest tighten. He found himself looking forward to her laughter, to her small gestures, the tilt of her head, the flick of her ears, the way her tail swayed when she was thinking. One evening, they were on the station's observation deck, watching the distant stars. Lyria sat close, her knees tucked to her chest. Jaren, she whispered, almost afraid of her own words. Yes? He asked, turning to face her. I feel safe with you, she said, her voice trembling. No one can hurt me when you're near. Jaren reached out, brushing a stray lock of fur from her face. You're safe because I won't let anything happen to you, he said gently. I promise. Her ears twitched and she leaned into his touch, a quiet trust passing between them. It wasn't just safety she felt, it was something deeper, a connection that went beyond words. Jaren realized he felt it too, a warmth spreading through him whenever she was near. He hadn't expected to care for anyone like this, not after years of solitude, but Lyria had changed something inside him. Days later, a sudden alarm sounded. A minor fire had broken out in one of the station's supply rooms. Jaren immediately moved toward it, Lyria close behind. She watched him fight the flames with quick thinking and calm determination. And then, as if instinct took over, she helped. She darted through the smoke, carrying heavy crates away from danger with surprising strength and agility. Jaren's heart leapt. Lyria, you're amazing, he shouted. She paused, panting, and gave him a small, shy smile. I can help you. I don't want to just hide anymore. It was the first time she had truly shown him she trusted herself and him enough to act. That moment changed something. From fear had grown courage. From caution had grown trust. And from that trust, a bond was forming stronger than either had expected. That night, as they rested on the observation deck again, Lyria leaned closer, her head brushing against his shoulder. I'm glad I met you, she whispered. You saved me. Jaren smiled, his hand brushing along her back. No, Lyria, he said softly. You didn't just survive because I saved you. You survived because you're strong. And because we're together now. Her tail curled against him, a quiet acknowledgement. In that moment, under the endless stars, both of them understood something simple and powerful. They were no longer just survivors. They were partners, and in the vast, dangerous universe, that bond might be the only thing that truly mattered. Life on the station was quiet, almost peaceful. Jaren and Lyria had begun to settle into a routine, gathering supplies, repairing parts of the old station, and slowly learning each other's habits. Lyria had grown more confident, exploring rooms she had once avoided and even laughing softly at Jaren's dry jokes. But the universe had a way of reminding them that safety was never guaranteed. One morning, the station's sensors picked up movement outside. A fleet of raiders, fast and armed, had detected the station and were heading straight for it. Panic spread among the few residents and alarms blared. Jaren immediately grabbed Lyria's hand. We need to move, he said firmly. His voice left no room for argument. Her ears flattened against her head, tail flicking anxiously. Are we going to be okay? She asked, voice trembling. Jaren knelt, meeting her gaze. We will. Together. The raiders struck with speed, blasting through the outer defenses. Jaren and Lyria ran through the corridors, ducking sparks and dodging falling debris. She clung to him, small claws brushing his arms, her body tense but moving with surprising agility. He could see fear in her eyes, but also determination. When they reached a junction, a group of raiders blocked their path. Jaren stepped forward, trying to hold them off, but one of them aimed a weapon directly at him. Lyria's ears twitched and something shifted in her. Move, she shouted, and without hesitation she leapt at the nearest attacker. Claws flashing. Jaren's jaw dropped. She moved with a grace and ferocity he hadn't seen before, striking and dodging with a precision that made even the seasoned raiders hesitate. Together, they fought not just to survive but to protect each other. Jaren used his strength and skill to disarm attackers, while Lyria's agility and cunning allowed her to outmaneuver them. Every time he glanced at her, he saw the same determination reflected in her amber eyes that he had seen when he first carried her from the wreck. She was no longer just a frightened survivor. She was a fighter. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the raiders finally retreated. The corridors were scorched, alarms still ringing, and smoke hung heavy in the air. Jaren dropped to his knees, breathing hard, and looked at Lyria. You were incredible, he said, voice shaking slightly. She collapsed against him, panting, her fur singed in places. I couldn't let them hurt you, she whispered, trembling. I don't want to lose you. Jaren pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. You won't, he said softly. Not now, not ever. For a long moment they stayed like that, surrounded by the chaos of battle but finding calm in each other's presence. Lyria's claws lightly dug into his uniform, a silent acknowledgement of trust and protection. Jaren realized then that their bond had grown stronger in the face of danger. unbreakable in a way he had never imagined. That night, as they tended to their minor wounds and checked the station's systems, Lyria curled against him again. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now shone with quiet confidence and warmth. You make me feel safe," she whispered. "And you make me proud," he replied, brushing a strand of fur from her face. "You're amazing, Lyria. Don't ever forget that." She nuzzled against him softly, a small smile on her lips. In the darkness of space, surrounded by danger and uncertainty, they had found something stronger than fear. They had found each other. And in that moment, Jaren understood something simple but profound. No matter what threats the universe sent their way, together they were unstoppable. Together they could face anything. The station had quieted after the attack, but the tension lingered like a shadow. Jaren and Lyria spent their days repairing damage, restocking supplies, and keeping watch. Yet amid the work, a subtle change had begun. Lyria no longer flinched at every sound, and Jaren noticed her watching him more often, her amber eyes following his movements with curiosity and something softer, something he couldn't yet name. One evening, the two sat on the observation deck. The station bathed in the pale light of a distant star. The universe stretched endlessly before them, beautiful and terrifying. Lyria rested her head on her knees, ears twitching as she studied the stars. Jaren sat beside her, quiet, letting the hum of the station fill the space between them. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jaren, can I tell you something?" "Of course," he replied softly, his hand brushing the metal railing beside hers. She hesitated, her tail curling nervously around her. I feel something for you. Something I've never felt before. Ever since you saved me, I can't stop thinking about you." Her amber eyes met his, wide and vulnerable, and for a heartbeat Jaren felt the world stop. He reached out, his fingers brushing her fur gently. I feel it too, Lyria," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "Ever since that moment in the wreck, I've wanted to keep you safe. More than that, I care about you. More than I ever thought I could." Her ears flicked nervously, but a small, hopeful smile appeared. She inched closer, her head tilting toward him. Does that mean you—" "Yes," Jaren said softly, finally closing the distance. He placed his hand against her cheek, feeling the warmth of her fur beneath his palm. "It means you're not alone anymore. Not just because I protect you, but because I want to be with you. Always." Lyria's tail wrapped around his arm, her small body trembling slightly. "Then, I'm yours," she whispered, a mixture of relief and determination in her voice. "If you'll have me." "You already are," he said, a rare smile breaking across his face. "And I'm yours." The stars outside the window seemed to shine brighter as if witnessing the moment. Lyria leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. She felt safe, not just in his arms, but in his presence. Jaren held her gently, his heart swelling with something he had never allowed himself to feel fully before. Love, fierce and protective, yet tender and warm. Days passed, and their connection deepened. Lyria began to trust herself and him more openly. She would sit closer during meals, walk beside him through the corridors, and sometimes rest her head on his shoulder while he worked. Each small gesture built a bridge of trust between them, strong enough to withstand any threat the universe could throw at them. One night, as the station rotated slowly, bathing the deck in shifting starlight, Lyria whispered, "I never thought I'd find someone like you, someone who sees me, who doesn't just save me, but understands me." Jaren's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "And I never thought I'd care for anyone this way. But I do, and I'll never stop. Not while I'm alive." For the first time since the wreck, Lyria felt truly free. Not free in the sense of moving without danger, but free in the sense of being herself, of trusting someone fully, and of loving without fear. And Jaren, for his part, felt the same. He had found someone worth protecting, worth fighting for, and worth loving with every fiber of his being. As they sat together under the distant stars, holding hands and sharing quiet breaths, both understood one truth. Survival wasn't just about life, it was about connection. And theirs was a bond unbreakable, forged in fire, trust, and now love. No matter what came next, they would face it together. And that made all the difference. The days after Lyria's confession were quiet, but the calm was fragile. Jaren and Lyria spent their time repairing the station, train, ing together. and exploring the nearby asteroid fields for supplies. Their bond had grown stronger, no longer just survivor and protector, but partners, allies, in something even deeper. Lyria followed him instinctively, her small hand often brushing his as they worked side by side, and he found himself constantly aware of her presence, protective in ways he couldn't ignore. One afternoon, while scavenging a nearby derelict ship, they were caught in an unexpected asteroid shower. The small ship shuddered violently, and debris rained down around them. Lyria's ears flattened, and she froze for a split second. Jaren grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a sturdy piece of wreckage. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. "We can get through this," she nodded, her eyes wide but determined. I trust you," she whispered. That simple statement, quiet as it was, struck Jaren harder than any weapon ever could. Her trust, earned through danger and shared hardship, was now freely given. He tightened his grip on her arm. "And I'll never let anything happen to you," he promised. The storm passed, leaving the derelict silent and battered. Lyria's fur was dusted with debris, her tail flicking nervously, but she smiled at him. Small, shy, and beautiful. I can do this," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Because you're with me." Jaren's chest swelled. "And I can do anything because you're with me," he said softly. That evening, back on the station, they rested together in the observation deck. Lyria curled into his side, her head resting against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the warmth of her body, the subtle rise and fall of her breathing. In that simple act, in the quiet of the station, their bond deepened further, beyond protection, beyond survival. "You're mine," she whispered, the words soft but deliberate. "And you're mine," Jaren replied, brushing his hand along her back. "Always." The universe outside was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable. Raiders, storms, and unknown threats could appear at any moment. But here, together, they were invincible. Their connection was not just emotional, it was physical, mental, and unbreakable. Each danger they faced together made them stronger, more aware of what they meant to each other. Over the next few days, Lyria trained alongside Jaren, learning how to handle basic weapons, how to think strategically, and how to act without hesitation. He marveled at her determination, her courage, and her resilience. Every moment she pushed herself, he felt pride swell in his chest. But he also felt something more profound, a love that was no longer hesitant or hidden. One quiet night, as they watched the stars, Lyria whispered again, her voice almost trembling with emotion. "I never thought I'd feel this safe or this happy, not until you." Jaren lifted her chin gently, looking into her amber eyes. "I never thought I'd find someone worth saving like this, someone worth giving everything for. But here you are, and I won't let you go." Her tail curled around his arm, pressing against him like a silent promise. For the first time since the crash, both of them felt complete, not because danger had disappeared, but because they had each other. Their survival had become more than staying alive, it was living together, trusting each other and loving each other fully. That night, as they slept close under the faint glow of the station's emergency lights, neither of them feared the universe outside. Together they had found something stronger than any threat, a bond unbreakable, a love forged in fire, and a trust that could withstand anything. No matter what came next, they knew this truth. As long as they had each other, they could face anything. The stars stretched endlessly outside the station, silent witnesses to the countless stories of survival, struggle, and hope. Jaren and Lyria had endured so much together, the crash, the chaos, the raids, and the endless uncertainty of space. Yet here they were, alive, stronger, and bound in a way neither could have imagined. It had been weeks since the last attack, weeks of quiet rebuilding and cautious exploration. Lyria moved with confidence now, her amber eyes bright and curious, her tail swaying naturally as she followed Jaren. She was no longer the frightened, fragile girl trapped under the wreck. She was a fighter, a companion, and something far more precious to him. Jaren often caught himself staring at her, amazed by the trust she had placed in him. She had chosen him, not because he had saved her, but because she had seen who he truly was. And in turn, he had found in her a spark of life and resilience that inspired him, reminded him what it meant to be human in a universe that often seemed heartless. One evening, as they watched a distant star flare in the void, Lyria leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Jaren," she whispered softly. Do you ever think about how far we've come? He smiled, brushing a strand of fur from her face. Every day, he admitted. From the wreck to the station to now, I never imagined finding someone like you. Someone I'd care about this much. Her ears twitched and her tail curled around his arm. I don't just care about you, she murmured, voice filled with emotion. I love you, and I trust you with everything I am. Jaren's chest tightened, a warmth spreading through him he had never known before. I love you too, Lyria, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion coursing through him. I've never wanted anything so badly. To keep you safe, to be with you, to face everything together. They sat in silence, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. Outside, the universe continued its endless motion, indifferent yet beautiful, and inside the small station, two lives had collided in a way that transcended fear, danger, and even time itself. News of their survival eventually reached other worlds. Whispers spread of the human who had saved a Vulpine girl, of their courage and loyalty, and of a bond that had endured impossible odds. People admired them, not for weapons or technology, or victories in battle, but for what they represented: humanity's strength, its compassion, and its ability to care fiercely even in the darkest moments. Jaren looked at Lyria, her eyes reflecting starlight and hope, and he realized that this was humanity at its finest. Not in conquest, not in war, but in the courage to love, to protect, and to trust in one another. Lyria shifted slightly, pressing closer to him. You showed me hope, she whispered, her voice soft but certain. You showed me life, not just survival, but life worth living. Jaren wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as though he could shield her from every danger in the universe. We saved each other, he said softly. I couldn't have done it without you, and I won't ever let you go. For a long time they stayed like that, holding each other as the stars wheeled silently overhead. No words were needed. Every heartbeat, every gentle touch spoke volumes. They had faced the wreck, the raiders, the darkness of space, and through it all, they had built something unbreakable. And as the station rotated gently, casting long shadows and starlight across the deck, Jaren knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity's true power wasn't in weapons or machines or even in surviving disasters. It was in the heart, in the choice to care, to fight for others, and to love even when the universe seemed cruel. Lyria looked up at him, eyes shining with trust and devotion. You're mine, she whispered, a smile tugging at her lips. And you're mine, Jaren replied, leaning down to brush his forehead against hers. Together they faced the future, unafraid, united, and stronger than any challenge the stars could throw at them. Together they were humanity at its best, brave, compassionate, and unbreakable. And in the vastness of space, that bond shone brighter than any star.